some help parting the clouds, and they need a ray of sun to come in and share what's happening. Matthew is a journalism professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He's the founder of the Drone Journalism Lab. He's the co-founder of Hot Type Consulting, which is a web development firm. And from 2007 to 2011, Matt served as programmer and journalist for the St. Petersburg Times, where he developed Pulitzer Prize-winning PolitiFact. He's at Matt Waite. Hint, hint, if you'd like to tweet something that Matt says that's thoughtful and profound, don't forget the hashtag ONA drones. And you visit the website Drone Journalism Lab at dronejournalismlab.org. Resources on there, and really the best way to keep up with the what's what on all of the incremental and significant developments that are happening fast and furious these days. I've asked Matt to join us for a few minutes to just give us the state of drone usage, again, focused on media and journalism and companies that could potentially take advantage of this. And then that way, I think, really helps set the tone for our in-room panel discussion with our local experts. But Matt, if you can hear us okay, we see you. You look great. Now I will toss it over to you, my friend.
All right. I wish I was there because I think it is about 12 degrees outside right now. So I'm guessing San Diego doesn't quite get that cold. Yeah, I suddenly feel really odd that I'm the one that has to give the ray of sunshine, which I'm really, really bad at that when I have to talk about drones and the FAA, because I've honestly thought about how to get my title changed or get business cards printed up that call me the Dream Crusher. We are not in a place yet where every journalist in a newsroom is going to be able to have a drone in their backpack and go out and fly. Honestly, we may not get there anytime soon, and it certainly may not be until autopilot software gets really, really good. What I want to do in the time and a half is just kind of break down the situation. Are you still there?
We hear you, Matt. We're just rebooting the video, but we hear you. Keep going.
Okay. I want to break down the situation in the simplest terms possible. What I don't want to do is rehash 300 and some odd years of aviation law, but I'll give you a pretty simple user's guide to the FAA and how they look at the world and what we can expect from them. So, whenever you're out there, look at this, thing you understand is the FAA identity users in aviation. There is the government, which includes me, a state university employee. A private institution is screwed. The government users have to be specifically tied to the government in some way. The second kind of user that they recognize are hobbyists, people who are just flying for the fun of it. They're just doing it because it's their hobby, they love it. They have a set of rules that until recently were more or less guidelines. The FAA is getting consistently and persistently more adamant that they're not really guidelines. But those guidelines amounted to stay under 400 feet, stay within your line of sight, only fly during the day, don't fly over people, don't fly near airports. It was essentially just don't be stupid. The third group of users that the FAA identifies, everyone who is flying for something other than their own hobby or they work for the government is what the FAA considers as a commercial user. And that includes private educators, that includes journalists, that includes anybody that wants to use them. This goes back to the FAA's feelings about pilots and pilot certification. If you go and you get 10,000 and you really want to go get a private pilot's license, you can do that, but you'll learn that the rules regarding just what you can do with that private pilot's license are really weirdly specific. So one of them is you cannot accept any payment at all for the flight, or you are now a commercial airline pilot, and you have to have a commercial rating, and you have to have all these other things in place. If you accept a tank of gas to fly, you are violating FAA regulations if you're a private pilot. If somebody buys your lunch, you're accepting payment for the flight, you're violating. So that's where that all comes from. So if I am drawing a paycheck and I'm flying around my UAV, then the FAA considers me a commercial user, and that is not allowed under current FAA policy. Now, I'm going to stress policy only because you have probably read a lot of really confused and conflicting and bad stories on the internet about just what's going on with the FAA right now in terms of what regulations exist and what's going on. And without really digging into the nitty-gritty on that, what has essentially happened is that there was a legal challenge to the FAA's authority to regulate drones. And at the trial court level, that challenge was successful. And the judge that reviewed it was actually pretty harsh on the FAA and what went on. That ruling was appealed by the FAA, and the full NTSB said that what the FAA has jurisdiction over is all aircraft. And the way that aircraft is defined in existing regulation is anything that is designed to fly through the air. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, wow, that's really broad, congratulations, you're correct. It's really, really broad. It means that if you bought up and go throw it outside, congratulations, you've just flown a federally regulated aircraft. Why did I just forget his name? Philip Rivers. Philip Rivers, the quarterback of your San Diego Chargers, is flinging federally regulated aircraft all around the state. I would love from the Second Amendment crowd to get wind that the FAA believes that bullets are a federally regulated aircraft. So the NTSB actually acknowledged, yes, it's broad. It's really kind of comically broad, but it is the rules, and therefore aviation regulations expands in the United States applies to UAVs just as much as it does to manned aircraft, which is really silly, but unfortunately that's the place that we're at right now. So if you are a commercial user, there is all but a ban in place. The FAA says you cannot fly for commercial purposes, with the exception of one way that you can. It's called a Section 333 permit. It's named after the section of the FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012 that basically says the FAA can come up with a means to allow for some limited commercial UAV use. There are now 24 333 permits in the United States right now. 24 out of several hundred applications that have been filed. And if you are paying attention at all, that means there's 24 legal users, and there's a whole going on out there that the FAA would take very deep view of if they had the resources to police. The 24 include a number of film and television production companies, well, I think all of them based in California. One of them is a realtor in Arizona who got a permit to fly his DJI Phantom 2, which is a very, very popular model of quadcopter, weighs about 3 pounds. I got one in my office. They're a ton of fun. But he got a Section 333 permit to fly it on the condition that he got a private pilot's license in order to fly it. He's having to spend $10,000 to learn how to fly a Cessna 172 so that he can fly a 3-pound hunk of plastic around. That's just absurd on its face. But that's where the FAA is right now. If you want a Section 333 exemption, if you think that your news organization or your television station wants to go out and get a 333 exemption, I hope you have a licensed pilot on staff. For really large markets, that's probably not a problem. You actually probably do have a pilot on staff. For smaller markets, for non-broadcast markets, that's probably a real problem, and honestly is a real impediment. Now, what's silly is, if I went down to the Arizona city that I'm not remembering where this realtor got his permit for, and I took my DJI Phantom 2 out, and I was just having fun. I'm just out for a day, and I just feel like flying around. I can fly right next to him without a private pilot's license. If he wants to take a picture of the house that he's trying to sell, he has to have a private pilot's license. Right now, the FAA does not have a drone license. And so what they're doing is they're basically requiring the lowest license that they do have, and that is a private pilot's license. What we know about the near-term future about regulations at the FAA is not a lot. The FAA for the last, well, actually they've been talking about it since 2007, but for about the last year, they've been talking locally about how they are going to publish rules that are going to govern small UASs. UAS is the FAA's preferred term for UAVs, drones, remotely piloted aircraft systems, whatever, flying robots with cameras, let's call them that. They want to publish separate rules for what they call small flying robots, and they'll deal with the big stuff up in the same airspace as your commercial airlines later on. Now, to the FAA, small is 55 pounds or less. Why 55 pounds? Well, I don't really know, but there is a major defense contractor that has a device that just happens to be 54 pounds. So I'm not going to draw any conclusions from that, but you can. 55 pounds or less is what they consider small. Now, most of the devices that you see making news lately are less than 10 pounds. They're 55 pounds is actually quite enormous. For a multi-copter, that would be gigantic. The heavier models tend to be fixed wing, and they tend to carry a lot more scientific grade sensing equipment and things like that. But the rules right now that the FAA is working on is for 55 pounds or less. They said that they were going to publish those by the end of the year. That deadline has long since been gone. It has now become a losing parlor game to try to guess when the FAA is going to publish those rules. What we understand is right now they are bottled up in the Office of Management and Budget in the White House, and there is some kind of dispute going on between what the FAA has proposed and what OMB wants, or what the White House wants. We don't know what that is. We just know that OMB is sitting on them and working on them.
Hey Matt, I'm gonna pause you right there because we anticipate that we're going to get into some of the legalities and some of the moving parts here in the room, and because we've only got you for another minute or two, you sort of closing out where you're at with this. I guess the $64,000 question is, what should media companies, news organizations, any private commercial entity that wants to be thinking about this and preparing, or what should they be doing, or where should they be at with all of this?
Well, one, you should be waiting for the notice of proposed rulemaking to come from the FAA. You should be very, very interested in that, because what comes out of there is really going to guide adoption in the United States. I would be watching out for things like onerous requirements, like owning a private platter, having a balance of flights, things like that. There will be public comment periods, and journalists and journalism organizations need to be aware of that and be ready to comment on them when it happens. The other thing that I'd be very, very mindful of right now, particularly in California, is that state legislatures are getting into the game of regulating aviation and airspace. There is a bill in Sacramento right now that would make flying over anyone's private property trespassing. That is a little bit troublesome in that, sure, we're probably just not going to go willy-nilly flying over people's property, but if there is a news event going on and you're flying around it and you're focused on it and you inadvertently fly over somebody else's property, are you really trespassing, and is that really a criminal offense? You in San Diego actually have a tremendous advantage in that you can go across the border and more or less fly around all you want. I've talked to a number of researchers at different universities in San Diego. They do precisely that. There's no point in trying to do it here in the United States. The regulations are just a pain, and the paperwork you have to go through in order to get a permit from the FAA is a real chore. So they just go over to Mexico, where the rules are much, much, much less, if not non-existent. So if you wanted to try flying them out, if you wanted to try them and experiment with them on a commercial level, I don't now I'm in much better shape there than I am in the smack in the middle of the country. Where we've had successes is we've been able to send students to other countries around the world and get them to use them there. And I'm going to attempt this real quick. I just want to show you this work that a student of mine did in Kenya, where in Nairobi there is this enormous dump that is just kind of sprung up. It wasn't really planned, and people illegally dumped there, and the government has been trying to shut it down. This that you're seeing right here is a 3D model that's actually been created by about 900 images shot from our UAV that we were flying over it. And you can actually explore the site as you so desire, and fly over it and see the roads in between there and get back a little ways. The other thing we're able to do is we're able to annotate the site. So this dump, this enormous dump that is overflowing and flowing into the Nairobi River here, is also bordered by not one, but two schools. There's a school and their playground. Here's another school and its playground. They're immediately next to this dump. The other thing is there are people who live in the dump here, and they go out and they try to find things that they can sell or recycle or make into something new, and that's how they live day to day. So this is on the horizon. I think that we'll be using these devices to tell stories in really new and unique ways that will unplug grammetry and will go beyond photos and videos very, very quickly.
That's terrific. A tremendous wealth of information. Thank you, Matt, to be able to show us the real world example of the 3D mapping was really neat. So thank you for your time. We will let you get back to the chilly weather in Nebraska, and we welcome you to come visit us anytime you like, open invitation. And we're thrilled that you can join us for a few minutes and take some time out for ONA San Diego.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Definitely worth a follow. At Matt Waite, smart guy, and they don't call him the professor for nothing. We're going to get to some more smart guys. We've got a really sharp panel, and very excited that we're able to present this group to you tonight. So I'm going to do some really quick introductions. We've got a number of topics and questions that we'll get to that we think really tackles the heart of the various issues around commercial use of drones potentially here. So we're going to go down the line and then we'll fire away with questions. And depending on where we're at with timing, we may have some additional couple of minutes at the end for your questions as well. If you use the hashtag, which is ONA drones, we're monitoring that, and that's a really good way to slip your question in, and we can fire it off at will. Going from the end closest to me, guys, we've got Lucien Miller. Lucien is the CEO of Innovative Designs based in Vista, California. Really excited to have Lucien as part of the discussion. Innovative Designs, if you're not familiar, they specialize in providing electric power systems for radio-controlled aircraft, and as well as Lucien's also the founding member of the Society of Aerial Cinematography. which is an organization that works with the motion picture industry to help integrate safe uses of drones as aerial camera platforms. And lastly, one of my favorite facts was Lucien is also the host of a really cool podcast called All Things That Fly. So we'll have to download, check out Lucien's podcast. And next we've got Chance Roth. Chance is the founder of San Diego Drone User Group, which I just checked earlier today. There are 570 pilots that are part of that big meetup group, and that's tremendous. Chance is a member of the leadership board of the Drone User Group Network, which is the largest community affinity group of its kind. You can check out the Drone User Group here in San Diego at meetup.com/drones. Meetup.com/drones. Next, we've got Michael Curran. Michael is a practicing civil, trial, and aviation attorney, who, along with his wife and partner Susan, are Curran and Curran Law in Encinitas. Michael is a professional pilot and instructor with extensive experience. He divides his professional time between legal trial work and providing legal consulting aviation-related expertise to clients and other attorneys on aviation-related cases and the federal aviation regulations. Over the past several years, he's assisted numerous clients in SUAV drone issues, namely the issue of SUAV for commercial purposes and similar legal issues with the FAA. He's a model airplane builder and flyer, as well as a drone aerial photography enthusiast. And I think you brought along your DJI Phantom 2 Vision. Terrific. So we can all take a look at that, snap some photos, and get close up. Thank you for joining us, Michael. As well, we've got Matt Triplow. Matt's a neat guy. He's a drone hobbyist, enthusiast. And I'm not doing a really good job of multitasking, I'll admit. I need one more hand to do this. But I'm going to make all this stuff available to you guys right after. So Matt is a drone hobbyist himself. He's the founder of aerialographer.com. Interestingly, as I was doing some recruiting and looking for local experts that would present a really thoughtful perspective and contribute to the discussion, I found Matt, of all places, on Instagram. He posts tremendous drone videos as well as other photography works on his Instagram feed, which is aerialographer, as well as also bringing your DJI Phantom 2 quadcopter tonight. So we're very pleased to have Matt, who will talk about the operation and the work that goes into and how you've refined your craft in the past couple of years. And finally, representing the newsrooms out there, very excited to have Mr. Don Shafer, news director at San Diego 613, working at San Diego 6. This is actually Don's 12th television station and his 11th as a news director. This isn't his first time as news director in San Diego. He actually served as the news director at KNSD, NBC San Diego in the early 1990s. He's got a very respected, tenured career in news, but he ain't just a news guy. He's dipped outside of news a couple of times in his career, once as a co-owner of a restaurant in Tampa, Florida, and as well as a partner in a design and construction company here in San Diego, as well as experience with law enforcement, serving 5 years in law enforcement with the district attorney's office in Pueblo, Colorado, and serving as interesting. So we've got one mic over there. If we can sort of pass it around, I'm going to fire off some questions. We're looking for short bursts. If you can keep it under 140 characters, that would be ideal. For formatting purposes, in tweets. But we know that this stuff can get rather complicated, so we're going to have lots of leeway on that. We really are looking forward to just good, fruitful dialogue tonight. Again, we've got some faces and names, and we'll keep the conversations going well after this. All right, so we're going to tackle a few different areas, folks. We've really broken this down into various categories that include the technical capabilities and challenges of operating these drones, the legal issues, which Matt obviously began to go into rather in depth, and certainly Michael's got tremendous expertise and experience in will be able to speak to that quite eloquently. We're going to tackle safety concerns, which are top of mind throughout, and then even the ethical dilemmas of once the sky is potentially filled with these devices and vehicles, what does that look like? What does the framework for operating with the public's trust look like moving forward? It looks like the Jetsons. It looks like the Jetsons. Very good. So I thought we'd start with just sort of the overview on technical capabilities, gentlemen. And I'd like to just hear from you. And it doesn't have to be, everybody goes wrong once. If you got your 2 cents ready to go, great. If not, we can wait for the next question for you. And I want to pass my microphone as well to this side of the table. But I'd like to just hear, Matt talked about some of the benefits on what drones could provide news and media organizations. But what are some things that you think of in terms of the usefulness and the benefits and potentially the use cases on how this technology could and would be applied? Don, I'll start with you representing news organizations, news operations. I should note as a obvious disclaimer, but for those that aren't crystal clear on the matter, Don is here as a subject matter expert for news operations. And I didn't invite him to come in and talk about specific strategy and what's happening at his station and what their intimidating plans are to go all in and buy a bunch of kits and invest heavily. That's for his organization and his leadership team to handle accordingly. And so just from the overview of where he sees technology and specifically drones, where that seems to be headed within newsrooms in the next couple of years.
Actually, drones, I think all of us in the broadcasting business anyway see it as a next logical expansion of what we're doing now. 6 stations here, we're all partners in a helicopter, which is actually owned by Channel 8. It's very expensive to run. It only runs for a little while, and they have to take it down for 100-hour maintenance, and it's not available to us in times of bad weather and not so much at night. And so a drone can do a lot of things for us. I think I think I would be remiss to not admit that we're experimenting a little bit. I have one of my multimedia journalists that has a whole stable full of drones. He's got a brand new DJI Inspire that he's going to take a receipt of on Saturday, and we have the ability with this piece of equipment to put it up live on the air because it will hook into one of our live view units. So there's a lot of things we think we can get with the drone: visuals, breaking news, obviously breaking news. All the things, the chases and fires and catastrophes, but also we've done stories with the local guys that sell real estate through the use of and show real estate through their drones. So there's, I can just see 100 uses just right off the top of my head for drones. I think we're just waiting for the time to come and we can do it legally and not be prosecuted for it.
Who else, guys? Obvious use cases or applications. Anything else jump out in terms of what we should be excited about?
So we didn't start out, Lucien and I have been finding these things for years. We didn't start out calling these things drones. We started out calling them RC planes and RC quadcopters and hexcopters and Y-copters. But the use from a journalist's perspective is unlimited, just like the use for drones themselves is unlimited, from aerial mapping to survey to search and rescue and all the different things they can do better than a turbine helicopter. Turbine helicopter is about $5,000 and $2,500 now operating costs, give or take. Yeah, I have a LiPo battery that I can fly that, and I can fly it all day long with batteries. You see the little white quadcopter over there, and its flight time is about 25 minutes. We stay conservative for about 20 minutes time, but you can launch that within a few minutes. Once you lock in, your GPS locks in. So on site, whether it's a car accident, a fire, helping a fire teams, environment, to see whether or not they can get into a certain, any of those types of things, you can do better because you've now got a 5 to 10 foot to 50 foot to a few 100-foot high perspective, a perspective you can't get a real airplane or a real helicopter.
Some of the things that we're currently working on, we're working with a company right now in the agricultural industry that instead of using crop dusters to spray fertilizers and pesticides and put, have a 5,000-pound airplane carrying 500 pounds of pesticides or fertilizer around, and having a pilot flying 10 feet from the ground, risking his life with every pass. We're working with a company that's going to develop a series of large multi-rotors that each carry about a gallon of material, and each one can spray about an acre of crop per battery charge. So they just send 30 or 40 of them out with GPS. They all know where they're going to spray, and they only have to fly like 2 feet above the crops, and it minimizes the waste, and it keeps overspray from getting into animals or other water habitats or things like that. There's a company in Holland that just developed a flying ambulance drone that has a portable defibrillator built into it. And if somebody has a heart attack, they can fly it directly to the person, and anybody there can open it up, pull paddles out, stick them on their chest, and hit it and save lives. And they're estimating that they could probably save 800,000 lives a year in Europe with a device like this, and there's just dozens and dozens of different kinds of uses for these, from having an eye in the sky to look at like when we have our fire season. If you can see a fire the moment it starts, when it's just a tiny little brush fire, and get in there to it before it's a 100-acre inferno, you can get in there with a couple buckets of water and put it out, instead of having to call in 50 aerial tanker planes to try and put this massive fire out. So there's just endless possibilities for the technology.
And Chance, you've got almost 600 members of your user group. Are a majority of those folks most passionate about video and photo? Is that
so? There's anyone, everywhere from beginners to advanced people in the group, and a lot of them all have their own ideas of how they want to use them. A lot of there's first responder type situations, there's search and rescue. There's people who do cinematography. Some guy showed up in our last meeting with a large SA100, which is a very large device. You want to program it to, like you saw. Nebraska. And there's people who want to do, I don't want to use firefighting. So it's pretty much all over the map. Here's something you took the USS Midway earlier. That's here with the commission. So
it's amazing stuff. While we're talking about flying drones and what comes with it, I'd love to hear from you guys. And starting with Matt, really, is what's the learning curve for your first drone flight? I mean, and then how do you get to the point where you become, where you're doing this? What does that look like today? Just strictly as an enthusiast, and then how would that potentially transcend to using it for commercial use? Our fear is that, as Matt has outlined, pilot certification could be a real thing. So, as journalists are applying for newsroom positions or some editorial position, is there going to be a checkbox portion at the bottom if you're a certified pilot? Is that what we're going to need to be thinking about?
Well, I'd say there's a very big difference between actually being able to fly and actually being confident in flying. Because you tell you what Google structure around you, make sure you get the GPS wrong. That's the only thing. And you can come up in the sky in a couple of minutes. But you'll be able to move around and fly, control the pilot. Of course, then you get to the land safely, taking it off. But to actually feel confident to fly along or fly around buildings, things like this, there's a big difference between that. It's, the first few times I feel like so that's a bit of a field, nobody around, so I practice. You're already for about the next hour is going to take off, land. You get some people actually kind of hand catch it as well. So you can have a partner, you don't have any sort of safety line. But I don't know, probably a good long. I mean, I spent a couple of months before I actually went out somewhere, where there could be people, or there could be buildings or some sort of any obstacles.
that's actually one of the advantages of our group is that you go there, learn, you have beginners, advanced people. So you want to learn ahead of time. A lot of people come out to look at them and then want to get involved and do that. an audience that have to scratch it.
We just recently had one of our exemptions granted for a client of ours. So we're one of the 24, and we were with Hollywood 7 as well. But what the FAA is doing right now is within those exemptions, they have not been issued yet without a minimum pilot license. And within their 33, and they're pretty onerous requirements for the exemption, the 333 exemption that Matt talked about. Pilot license, 100 hours of time operating UAVs or UASs. In addition to that, what's that? Well, yeah, flight physical before you get your FAA pilot license, you have to have an FAA, at least a third-class medical certificate, of course. And then each flight, this is what makes it very difficult for folks like you, photojournalists, is that each flight you have to have a certificate of operational authority, so you have to go to the FAA, apply for that, the FAA has to approve that, and you also have a local NOTAM issue. So it makes it impossible for a journalist to come in, whether it's an accident or some sort of news story or whatever else. What you want to do is get to the story, get the drone out, get the footage. That's what you want to do. Right now, the FAA says that's against policy. There's a ban. FAA regulations don't have there been in the FAA's history. So as we sit right now, there's nothing really preventing you from doing that other than the FAA trying to discourage you from doing that. We'll kind of get into what that's really. The current penalty, the teeth that the FAA has is a $10,000 administrative fine. But for you folks, and kind of give you a little bit of legal opinion, we're already seeing cases where what we really have is a battle between the First Amendment, I'm sure you guys know what that is, and FAA policy. I want to be on the team of the First Amendment. The First Amendment's been around a long time. FAA policy is just policy, and their policy is not based on regulation, but it's based on FAA advisory circulars, which by their very nature are advisory compliance. So we've got the FAA right now trying to enforce their policy without any actual regulation. That's kind of the battle.
Question for Lucien, and I'd love to hear from the rest of you guys as well. So just continuing with the theme of introducing this technology and ramping up and learning to be a skilled operator. Is it your sense that the average adult could pick up on something, and this could be a part of this could be an operational function of a few things that they do, say, out on a news story, or is this still, and probably will be for another few years or something, really a specialized skill that you want to have a dedicated person? Because that's, I think, one of the hooks for organizations is, does this mean another person and this is what they'll do? Or am I going to ask a producer, a reporter, a photographer, amidst doing several other things to go out and cover a news story? Hey, launch a 5-pound bowling ball that could potentially take out some people or property. What does that look like? What's the trade-off?
Well, obviously, you want to have qualified pilots. There's no doubt about that. With the SOAC, the Society of Aerial Cinematography, that I'm a founding member of, we're working with all of these Hollywood agencies that have been granted the waivers. And what we're trying to do is to integrate the job description of the drone operators into the current job descriptions of camera operators and grips and directors of photography and things like that, to where it's just a new skill set that they will learn. But when it actually comes to flying the drone, these, as Michael and I are both commercial pilots, and we can both agree on the fact that every single airplane flies differently. You can take 3 Cessna 172s off the flight line, and every one of those planes is going to fly a little bit differently. They've got personalities like people do. And so when it comes to a specific drone, to ask somebody to come in and fly it that has maybe flown that model before, but not that specific drone, with that specific radio, with that specific flight controller system, and those specific motors and propellers on it, is dangerous, because it's one of those things where you learn through just repetitive flight over and over and over again. And like anything else, to get a commercial pilot's license, you have to have 250 flight hours of instruction and So, and to get that many hours with drones where you typically only fly 10 minutes at a time, you're talking well over 1,000 flights. And it's not if the drone can fly well when it's under full GPS control. What happens if you have a GPS black? What happens if you have something go wrong with flight control? That's when the exceptional pilot skills come in. And it's in those cases where your newbie pilots that have maybe only flown 3 or 4 times and they're so used to having everything done automatically for them, when the automatic systems fail, they don't have a clue what to do, and they end up crashing into a person or a building or the White House lawn or something like that. So I see it's going to be extremely important, and that's one of the regulatory things that we're fighting for is a specific pilot logbook and currency and all that kind of stuff before they fly.
That's terrific. I want to hear from Don next. Before I do, I'm just going to reference this video that's been out for 1.5 years now. It's the BBC News sort of first attempt or introduction of when they use a hexacopter to shoot reporter stand-ups and to be inserted in stories. And the reason why I point this out is they sort of interviewed the crew that's assigned to do this film work, and they said it took them about 6 months to get to the point where they can, deliver in this with this quality and have the movements and have the confidence. But Don, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to talk about. I mean, the young man that was here shooting for me tonight, we'll do a story on this at 10 o'clock. He's a certified in setting up live trucks, which are very complicated. They have 52-foot masts on them. They can easily go up into high voltage electric wires and kill everybody in the truck and people around it. So I would want, if we're going to launch one of these, just as he mentioned down there, you want to be really trained. We had a drone over here at the station I came from in Peoria. Got very, very afraid of putting it up over any kind of crowd. And you really want to have training in place when it comes to something like that professionally. We probably have our photographers that are trained to do it and the ones that are out there doing it every day, rather than just someone like me that you don't want to have run things like that.
I have a question. Did you have spotters at the same time with the person that was shooting the video?
More people, yeah. I mean, we have. I was just digging out my my cell phone here has. An app or it's right on the air, full audio, it zooms, it does all kinds of things. It sends still. We can do that. But of course, something had 3 or 4 people kind of looking all over the place and running it because we didn't trust. And again, we wanted to be very careful. We used it to shoot some commercials with, and that's about it. We had very few news applications because of the law and all, but I think you have to be very, very careful.
So I had kind of a legal follow-up to what Don was saying, which I agree with completely. And for those of you operating photojournalists, most of the formats that we see is you've got a kind of an on-air talent, you've got a photographer. I don't think it's going to be any different if you're using the drones or quadcopters or whatever they end up being called. It's going to be the same, but you're going to want to have a dedicated person for one, just for currency, but the bigger reason is for safety. You're going to be, you don't really want to fly these over people if that little DJI drone loses a motor, unlike a jet engine, I can still fly on one engine. If it loses a motor, it's going to crash. It's going to come down. I'm not going to be able to control it. I can be, doesn't matter what kind of talent I have, you lose a motor on these things, they're going to crash. So from a liability standpoint as well, we're going to see in the next few years as news agencies start using these things and we see more and more commercial uses, we're going to see them crash, we're going to see them hit people, we're going to see liability and those kind of things. So you're going to want to minimize and make sure that you're maximizing safety as an operator for your news station.
They are getting, over time, in the next 2 years, they are going to become much easier to fly. They have on-automatic software. So barrier is coming down, but I feel that that's as well as I'm confident.
So, I know that the legal layers and complexities are, really one of the biggest issues here in this conversation. And Matt certainly gave us his takes and where he sort of sees things current and in the near future. But I think that's where a lot of us are not sure, and we're waiting to find out. When is the hammer going to drop? When will we know what those rules of engagement are from a legal standpoint? So, we've done Michael's introduction, and he's certainly very plugged in on many of these issues. We've heard Matt's interpretation of some things going on. I'd love to hear where you're at with a lot of these moving parts, and then hear from all of the panelists on the legal constraints, and then where you can see things going in the near future.
Sure. So Matt did a pretty nice job of telling you where the FAA has been. As we said, the FAA has never regulated model aircraft, or UAVs or SUAVs, as they like to call them UASs, unmanned aerial systems, in an operator and a camera. So in all of its history, there has been a single rate, and it's not even regulatory, advisory circular 9157. Gave some very nice practical advice back in 1981. Stay below 400 feet, below the national airspace system. Don't do dumb things. Don't fly around airports. Don't hit people. Kind of practical advice. Well, that's what the FAA relied on when they issued some policy statements in 05 and 07. But in 07, for the first time, they distinguished between recreational use, like Matt talked about, and commercial use, because the FAA's mindset is commercial use, the safety standards are elevated, and you need more qualification, more inspection, and all those kinds of things. Here's where we sit today, and I just wanted to kind of follow up. Now, understand that we have to talk about, when we talk about law, there's a lot to cover in a very short amount of time, so I'm kind of talking quick, I know our time's limited. But first of all, we have to talk about federal law, federal aviation regulations. There are none. There's policy statements by the FAA, and there's attempted interpretation by the FAA, and there is one precedential case, which is the perfect case, which is what he talked about. Judge Garrity got it right. He said they're not aircraft by traditional FAA standards. We start regulating aircraft. Well, gee, if we have the collision of two frisbees on the beach, we've got to call the FAA and NTSB. They need to investigate that. So obviously, we're not going to do that. But what we're seeing more now of in terms of regulation, while the FAA hasn't got that figured out, we're seeing state authorities and we're also seeing local authorities. I saw in looking at this, and I thought you guys would find this interesting. Colorado has now come up with a legislation that allows you to shoot down a drone over your yard. Oklahoma and Colorado, Deer Park, Colorado is now authorized itself to issue hunting licenses for drones. So you can get a hunting license, you can go out with a shotgun and look for them and shoot them down. That's their law. This is Deer Park, Colorado, so I just was reading about that today. And we're seeing that because there's knuckleheads out there that are attaching assault rifles to them and shooting them at gasoline-filled models and blowing them up on YouTube. So no wonder there's some fear and concern. I take this to a party and all the guys go, "Hey, that's really cool. Let's see it fly." And the women go, "Wait a minute. You mean you could fly that outside my bathroom and look in my window?" Well, yes, I could. I'm not going to, but I could. So there seems to be kind of a distinction between guys and gals moving on this, where guys kind of think they're cool and women are more concerned about the privacy of which there's already laws on. So, like I say, I think we're going to boil down to, in the next few years, especially for journalists, a battle between FAA policy and FAA regulation and the First Amendment for journalists, because obviously there's freedom of the press and you have rights to go out and take pictures of things in the public eye. The last thing that I want to talk about is local law enforcement. What we're already seeing with local law enforcement is a lot of confusion among local law enforcement officers who are saying, "Hey, those things are illegal. I heard the FAA say illegal. Ban that thing right now." And what we're seeing, the exercise of authority by local law enforcement officials. I just saw at the ski in the national parks, they've banned drones. At the ski resorts, they've banned drones. Santa Monica Pier has banned drones. So we're seeing a lot of bans on drones, no drone signs all over, and that's at the local level, not necessarily federal or state, but just local law enforcement
And ban their drones around their
Right.
perimeter, but they've got a
fly.
Yeah, so
So
the,
they're using the law.
right, yeah. So the interpretation of that is, it's not illegal, but we'd like to make the money from it. Yeah. So, yes, ma'am.
This is kind of in the realm of the sci-fi. Having been many years ago and worked with London, I'm thinking about
We're nearly a million years old.
approximately. I'm thinking about the tremendous chances that Harry General is taking from Warsaw. And I'm thinking how wonderful it would have been to have a little drone with a little video camera in my hand to see around the corner to see who's going to shoot at me if I go around the corner. But what if when we also have a little screen and they can see the same thing so they can undo my advantage?
Well, we've already seen that in war uses. I mean, the U.S. military and other militaries already use kind of this peekaboo pop-up type camera system, smaller drones that are not going to show up on radar and all those kinds of things. But yeah, we're going to have them, and the other guys are going to have them. There's no doubt about that. But I think it certainly is a great use from a safety standpoint. If you're a journalist, on location in a war zone, I'd certainly like to see what's going on around the corner before I pop my head on the corner. Yes, sir.
For a moment. About 30-something years ago in New York, there was a sports event. What is it? Drifting, and at halftime, somebody threw some kind of toy, throwing two people's heads, killed them.
I've seen it, more and more, and I kind of recognize because I'm looking at it. I know what their outline looks at. Like the Rose Bowl last year, they had them flying over the Rose Bowl. You can see the outline and some of the shots. So, we're seeing them all over, but that's also brings up that most of the stadiums and those kind of things are outlined, and of course, except for their own people.
Right at the border.
The smuggling incident?
Yeah, smuggling.
Yeah.
That's the first, heard about that?
He tried to take 2 kilos of something like meth or whatever it was, yeah.
Right.
So, on a drone that really would only carry about 3 pounds, maybe. Yeah,
So if it
so,
would have been, let's say it would have been across Mexico to the US and
well, like Matt talked about, he would have been flying legally, arguably in Mexico, but commercially here in the US, so.
Let's sorry, I just want to keep it on track. We're focused on the legal aspects because I don't want to get too far in other directions, and we miss some good conversation opportunity there. And so timing is important, and by all accounts, it seems like the lawmakers in Washington are dragging their feet for various reasons. In your educated opinion, Michael, is 2015 the year? Do we have any
They've missed
idea?
at least 3 deadlines to come up with some sort of regulation. Canada's ahead of us, they've done it. In my legal opinion, it's really not that, it's a complex problem that it's a simple problem. If we took 9150, 9157, the advisory circular, made that regulation, it would solve a lot of the problems. Really simple, keep it simple, folks. But because the FAA is grappling with, instead of trying to take parts of this and regulate parts and go, okay, let's start with the SUAVs. Let's start with the SUAVs under 10 pounds. Those are not terribly dangerous. Let's follow some basic, simple rules on those, and people can operate those. All right, now let's take the next group. 55 pounds in the contractor that you mentioned, that's probably why that's a big, dangerous machine. That, with little plastic props, if it falls on somebody, it might hurt you, and it might cut you. It's very unlikely that that's going to kill you unless it falls from, in a very unusual circumstance, that's really going to cause some, but we don't really want to fly them at the top of people, those kind of things. But I'd like to be positive. However, the FAA has been grappling with this since at least 2012 in terms of coming up with something, and here we are in 2015, we haven't seen something.
Yeah, the timing is interesting. I've got one of Matt's incredible videos queued up that he's doing this for fun, for a hobby, but your living is based on photography, videography, and as much as you'd love to integrate drone operation into your business, because certainly there's a need for it, there's a desire. You have customers that will want, they pay money on this. You're losing out because you're waiting for.
I get almost an inquiry every week, I'd say, from mostly from Instagram, see my work. But yeah, I have to turn it down. I had to turn down some celebrity work, some real estate work for UK lady's house being sent. I don't think that's impossible. So that's the thing, because there is that confusion. Right? It's in the law. But yeah, I mean, I took the services last weekend up in this actually. That's in Belmont. No, I made no money at all. I'm officially not. Yeah. Actually, I got inquiries to what on camera. No.
So
what about live video, aerial video?
Yeah. Well, the FAA is planning any and all of those uses. It can exchange money, taking, whether you're promoting yourself, whether CNN purchases the video from videographer, they're calling all of that a commercial. That's the FAA stance. What's that?
We are told, but we're told that we can put video on the air shot like that if it's given to us, or if we negotiate it, we can use it and put it on the air just like YouTube video or anything else. If someone comes to us with a file on a hard drive, we can take and put it on the air.
I would personally legally agree with that opinion. Yeah.
But what if you
We have a number of stringers. There are a lot of stringers around here. If you saw the movie, the Stringer movie that was based in LA, Nightcrawler. These people are fairly legitimate around here. But these
The stringers that we buy, Lindsay here buys, she keeps these guys in business. She buys video from these guys every night. And we haven't probably had a lot of drone video from these guys yet. They're mostly shooting chases and shootings and car accidents. But I imagine the times can come where the Nightcrawler video is going to be, video of chases and things like that, shot with a drone. Can we buy that and put it on the air? I think now we're right up against the line of what's legal and what's not.
Well, I will tell you that it is not illegal. There is no law that applies to that, at least at the federal level. There may be some state or some local or something, I'm not sure, those things are changing all the time. But at the federal level, as we sit, there is no federal aviation regulation that addresses recreational use or commercial use or press use or anything like that. There is FAA policy and FAA bans that are not enforceable from a regulatory standpoint.
Chance, you were going to weigh in on.
So since I'm a grassroots groups have a guy I like to take these in my own hands if you want to show. So I put together like a lighthouse.gov people petition, basically asking everyone to protect the rights to do these things. And we got 263 out of 100,000 votes. But it's early. Yeah, it's 3 days ago I put this up. So I think that's okay. So basically, it's just asking for what we're asking up here. It's like, and if you put on the bottom, it says we ask for firm, timely, workable rules so that we can continue to innovate. Because we're really that these regulations are holding up innovation domestically. No immaterial left.
I'm confused about what you're saying about the law. So they've been banned in national parks. What happens to you like flying in a national park?
You get fined. It's a ban. You get fined.
Okay, but I'm not going to be taking the court.
There, if you don't pay the fine, I suppose you could be taken to court. But that's so the national park system. What's that?
That's a different.
That's a collectability issue. Yeah, I mean, but it's not a crime. It is a ban. So what you're doing is you're violating a national park system ban, like leaving a burning fire. Those kinds of. So it's a national park.
So it can cost you money.
It can cost you money. You're not going to go to jail. You're not violating a criminal statute. I've seen it done. I don't know that they have the authority to do that because you're not committing a criminal act. They can fine you. They can issue a citation, a ticket. Potentially even have that case heard. but I'm not aware of any authority that would allow you to take your video or take your property.
Guys, how active is San Diego PD, San Diego sheriffs, our counties, law enforcement agencies? If they see somebody flying a drone in a park or something, do they count? And what do they do?
What we're not talking about is all the drones that all the thousands of drone flights that happen. Nothing's happening. Right. No big deal. And back in the 80s, they were the professionals that they were very huge.
Lucien, you've got some thoughts on this.
Well, the truth of the matter is they're being used every day right now. I was down at Channel 6 News a couple of weeks ago on their morning program the day after the one crashed on the White House lawn because they wanted, a local, expert to come, talk about it. And while I was sitting in the green room waiting, there was a car commercial for the mile of cars, and the whole commercial was shot with quadcopters. In fact, you could see the shadow of the quadcopter at about half the shots. Now, I know that they didn't make that commercial for free. Somebody got paid to do that. And so they're, and so here I am going on the show to talk about, is this legal or not? And the commercial on the very network that I'm sitting in the green room of is showing a commercial that shows them, being used. So like Michael said, there's technically no laws against it. And it's only if you get a cop that doesn't like drones, that is told by somebody that likes them even less to go confiscate it from you, that you run into any problems.
Yeah, I haven't heard, at least locally, I'm in the North County area, I haven't heard locally taking control or taking property, but I have heard people being told not to fly in certain areas, and there's some local ordinance about certain parks and those kind of things. But we've been flying, our country's been flying remote control aircraft since the turn of the century. And nobody paid attention to it until we put a camera on it, and then everybody got very concerned. So that's what changed everything.
So let's continue with that. So privacy, cameras, the expectation of someone's in their home and they don't want these things buzzing overhead, rightfully so, peering in and recording things. Right. Well, let's, from a legal standpoint, what is in bounds there, and how could that evolve?
There, privacy laws exist. You can't invade people's privacy in their home. So whether you use a quadcopter that has a nice little camera and you come nice and close, or you're sitting on a hilltop with a 500-millimeter lens, the privacy laws are still the same. What has gotten people more concerned is because now knuckleheads fly them over people's homes and around people's homes. And so people feel as though their privacy is being violated. And in fact, if you're filming somebody in the air of the space right above their property, which they own, you're invading their privacy. So, what's that? There isn't, from a regulatory or a legal standpoint, there really isn't a difference. But what's got people? I mean, this is a public perception, and it's not right. Yeah, the law hasn't changed. If I'm flying my Bonanza at 1,000 feet high with a really big lens, and I take a picture of your property or your wife in the backyard sunbathing, I'm invading your privacy. That doesn't change whether I have a quadcopter, my Bonanza, or a helicopter, or anything else. So. I don't disagree with you. There isn't a difference.
Well, but I think if we bring it back to the perception level, we're not just talking about professional journalists and people that work for reputable media companies. We're talking about a flood of newbies entering the skies, and you just know there's going to be somebody that's going to use this in some nefarious way and get something, and it paints a black eye on the rest of the movement that wants to jump in and do really cool things and impactful things in what they offer to customers or audience.
In my mind, it's a lot like firearms. I mean, there's lots of good stuff that firearms, like protection, civilians, and then people on the heads, as it's used and stuff. Just,
Attach firearms to drones.
Yeah. Well, then, not good. Then you can invoke the Second Amendment.
No doubt about it. Basic negligence laws are not going to change. If you're operating your drone and you hit somebody, you're going to be responsible. We've already seen with a lot of clients of ours, there is now UAV drone insurance available. So liability insurance, like you say, like car insurance. So yeah, it's. I mean, the law is already pretty clear. If I'm operating an aircraft or a remote control aircraft, or my little quadcopter, my little Phantom falls out of the sky and hits my neighbor's little granddaughter or something like that, I'm responsible in the story. If I'm the plaintiff's lawyer, I'm going after the pilot and perhaps the landowner or anybody else. If I'm the plaintiff's lawyer, I'm absolutely going to sue the operator, I'm going to sue whoever was there with them, and I'm going to sue the news agency. Yes, no doubt about it. Yeah, none of that, all that is the same. Same thing as a chopper or an airplane or a jet or anything else.
That's why we didn't demonstrate the YouTube drone.
That's why I'm not going to light up that one in that room.
Well, if anybody who's gone on to, say, Amazon.com and searched drones or even drones with cameras, you get hundreds, thousands of results. We have some of the DJI models here. Is that sort of the recommendation for a serious enthusiast? Is that becoming the, I don't want to say gold standard because it's still early I think, but where do we turn to? What's a good entry level, but you don't want a Radio Shack special? Are there some styles or categories or classifications we should be thinking about?
I'll address this briefly, and I'm sure Lucien has other comments. He's more of an expert in terms. But the DJI Phantom is kind of what started. It's the most popular one. You see that. I see you nodding, and you guys have seen this one. So this is the DJI Vision 2 Plus. It's a 16 megapixel camera. You can go right directly onto your smartphone, your iPad, real-time, first-person view. You can watch the video live. You can press take a picture. You can press take video. You can move the camera up and down. So it's the most user-friendly. It's about a $1,300 model, give or take. You can find them on Craigslist right now for about $1,000. And so it's probably the most popular one right now, and it goes up from there.
Yeah, that's your basic entry level right there. That's going to get you some decent B-roll footage, for newscast. Going up from there, you've got, like what's just on the screen right there. You start getting your 800 millimeter hexcopters, like an S800 or an S900 from DJI, or the new DJI Inspire, which is designed from the ground up to be an aerial videography and aerial photography platform. That's a $4,000 craft right there with a single controller, and it's about $5,000 with a dual controller and a dual video downlink. I mean, from there you can go up into some serious, 1,000 millimeter octocopter machines with 0 time delay, full HD video telemetry downlink systems, and you're pushing $20,000 when you start getting up into those kinds of systems. With a Canon 5D camera hanging in front of it for true, HD videos, or even a Red Epic or Scarlett or something of that nature in the big giant cinematography styles. So I mean, $1,000 is your entry level to get something that's journalistic quality, like the one you're looking at right there. on the screen right now. That's going to be about a $4,000 to $5,000 system. And when you start getting into true Hollywood cinematography systems, by the time you pay for the machine and the camera and the video technique and everything, you're breaking into the $100,000 range. The motor technology is already here. I mean, that's my area of specialty. My company specializes in providing electric power systems for these types of aircraft. The thing standing in the way right now is battery technology, because right now you can't carry enough batteries to fly for very long. Most of the craft out there have a flight time of between 15 and 20 minutes, and some that are specialized for long flight times can get in the 20 to 30 minute range, but that's pretty much it right now. What's going to make a drastic battery technology, where we see maybe a 5-fold or a 10-fold increase in battery energy density, to where a battery, that's the size of my smartphone right here, that would fly a craft for 15 minutes, would be able to fly it for 2 hours. That's where you're going to see the major technological advancements coming in. Well, yeah, that's because the camera only draws an amp of current. A large octocopter flying in the air, just in a stable hover, can draw 40 or 50 amps of current. So it takes a lot of battery to supply that much power for any given amount of time. On some they are. On the DJI, the newer DJI Inspire, it's a plug-in module, just like changing a battery on a cordless electric drill. It just pops right in the back. It's got a built-in battery meter on it and everything. So you push a button in to check the charge level. Most of the ones that guys have, it's a separate unit with a plug that you plug in and unplug. But a lot of the more commercialized units are going to modular battery packs that just simply plug right in, like this one right here that Mike's got. The new Phantom 2 has a modular battery pack, and it has a built-in battery meter on the end. You push a little button, it'll give you an indication of how much charge is left in the battery. Yes, each craft has its own proprietary connector and its own proprietary charge circuitry and that kind of stuff.
You get 25 minutes out of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really? Yeah, really.
Yeah, exactly. They'll have, and these types of batteries, the new lithium ion polymer batteries that these use, can be fast charged in as little as 20 minutes now. And so you can go out into the field with half a dozen battery packs and a couple battery chargers, and you just keep hot swapping batteries all day long. You pull one out, drop it in the charger, pop a new one in 30 seconds you're back up in the air, and just keep cycling batteries all day to the charger. On a craft like that, I think they're like around $150 a piece, or $170 a piece, something like that. So it's just like the battery of a camera, of a high-end digital camera. It's not, crazy out of this world pricing. Yeah, most of these batteries will last 200 to 300 cycles if you standard charge them. Some are approaching 500. If you do quick charge, you do cut the life in half because of the rapidness of the charge. You'll kill the batteries quicker.
We've actually reached the end of the formal program. I am going to hope and perhaps beg some of the panelists to stick around for a couple of minutes. You can ask more of these technical questions, exchange contact info, talk about renting some drone time and work on that pilot skill. But it's been a tremendous hour and a half or so, a wealth of knowledge. We've got a lot of notes, we've got a lot of tweets, we've got videos, photos. Our promise from ONA SD to you guys is this is not the last time we do this. There's a lot happening behind the scenes in Washington here locally with the drone community, the journalism world. Legally speaking, there's just a lot there for us to keep picking apart. A round of applause for our guests, please. Thank you, guys. We should do the raffle really quick before people start to leave. So there's still some cookies left.
My beautiful assistant, Mama. Question, what's the perimeter around the airport that you're supposed to stay out of?
Well, the DJI did something which I think is kind of smart. They built into the Phantom 2 Vision a 5-mile perimeter.
I only have a Phantom 1, so.
You can fly right over there. Well, you can. I don't recommend it, but yeah, your Phantom 1 is not going to stop. My Phantom 2 Vision will fly up to about 20 feet, and it'll only go to about 20 feet. It'll reach only. That's you're right. I think that's the reason that there's that 5-mile perimeter is because aircraft come in, they'll fly it down with a base, find a leg.
I understand that. I'm trying to figure out. I'm supposed to train students how to fly out. And so I've got to figure out. I got to tell them where can't you fly.
Well, I don't think you're at a park that's within 2 nautical miles of an airport or something like that. Fine, don't go above 100 feet, or be careful in terms of your altitude. But like I said, this one is programmed to avoid that airspace, whereas the earlier versions were not. And most of the quadcopters are not programmed to avoid that airspace. You got to do yourself.
Michael and I did a presentation for the League of Women Voters a couple of months ago. He brought his, and was flying it out on the back deck, and he thought something was wrong with it. Why won't this thing go over 20 feet? And it's like, oh yeah, it's got the new firmware update. We're right across the street from the airport.
Coming in and went,
Oh yeah.
All right, guys, please come up, ask questions. I know some of you need to leave, but is Enrique here? Enrique? Oh, yeah. My wife, Lauren. Sure. Thank you, everyone.
What's up, Don?
How you doing?
Hey, fire.
Okay.
I left the office and I got half an hour. Thank you very much.
so look up,